The soft light of the restaurant reflected off the silver cutlery as I watched my son Jose blow out the candles on his birthday cake, 35 years old. 35 years since I had held him in my arms for the first time, when he was just a helpless baby who cried in the early hours of the morning, and I would get up without complaint to comfort him. Now there he was, a man who barely looked me in the eye. Paola Mendez, his wife, had spent the entire dinner shooting me looks of contempt every time I opened my mouth to say something. When I mentioned the rice was delicious, she snorted. When I complimented the waiter on his kindness, she rolled her eyes. When I tried to tell Jose about the new neighbor who had moved in next to my house, she interrupted the conversation to talk about their travel plans to Cancun. "Look, Jose, I already booked the hotel on the beach," she said, showing him pictures on her phone, completely ignoring my presence. 5 stars, with a spa included. "We're finally going to relax." I took a sip of my water with lemon and tried to join the conversation. "How lovely, my son. I'm glad you can take a vacation. You both work so hard." It was then that Paola shot up from her chair as if she had received an electric shock. Her eyes filled with a fury that left me breathless. Her face transformed completely, showing a side of her I had never seen in the 4 years she had been married to my son. "I am sick of you and your voice." The scream tore from her throat with a violence that made the glasses on the table tremble. The words crashed against my face like an invisible slap. The entire restaurant fell into absolute silence. Forks stopped midway to mouths. Conversations died. The waiters froze with trays in their hands. Even the background music seemed to fade away to make room for the echo of her poison-filled voice. "I can't stand your stupid comments anymore. I can't stand you coming here and ruining our moments," she continued screaming, her hands flailing in the air like the wings of a crazed bird. Her red dress moved violently with each gesture. "Always meddling in our conversations. Always with your opinions that nobody asked for." I felt the blood rush to my cheeks. The heat of shame burned me from the inside out. My hands began to tremble on the white cloth napkin in my lap. My heart was beating so hard I thought everyone in the restaurant could hear it. The other diners stared at us from their tables with a mixture of morbid curiosity and compassion. An older woman at a table in the back looked at me with understanding eyes, as if she recognized her own pain in me. A young couple whispered to each other as they watched us. The waiters exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene or stay away. But what hurt me most wasn't the stares of strangers. It was seeing Jose, my only son, the boy I had raised with so much love and sacrifice, sitting there like a stone statue. His eyes avoided mine as if I were an annoying stranger. He didn't say a word to defend me. He didn't raise his voice to quiet his wife. He just sat there, motionless, allowing me to be torn apart in public. "Every Sunday is the same," Paola continued her ruthless attack. "You come with your boring stories, with your advice that nobody wants to hear. You're a burden, a stone in our shoe." Each word was like a knife twisting deeper into my heart. The humiliation burned my throat like acid. How had I gotten to this point? How had the woman who had given her entire life for her family ended up being treated like trash on her own son's birthday? I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words, trying to hold on to what little dignity I had left. "Paola, I don't want to hear another word," she interrupted, her eyes shot with fury. "I'm sick of you, sick of seeing you, sick of pretending I care what you have to say." The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my own ragged breathing, the ticking of the wall clock, the distant murmur of cars passing on the street. My entire world had been reduced to that moment of absolute pain. Then Jose spoke. My son, my only son, finally opened his mouth. But it wasn't to defend his mother, it wasn't to quiet his wife, it was to drive the final nail into the coffin of my dignity. "Mom," he murmured in a cold voice I didn't recognize. His eyes looked at me without a hint of the love I had once seen in them. "I think it would be better if you left. Paola is right. You always end up ruining everything. You always make things awkward." My son's words hit me harder than all of Paola's screams combined. I felt something break inside my chest, something I knew would never heal. The pain was so intense that for a moment I thought I would faint right there, in front of all those strangers who were watching me with pity. But then Instead of crying, instead of begging, instead of running out like a defeated woman, I did something that even I didn't expect. I smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile that only I knew the meaning of. A smile that held secrets. A smile that promised justice. I raised my trembling hand and beckoned to the waiter who had been watching the whole scene from a distance. He approached with hesitant steps, clearly nervous about what he had just witnessed. He probably expected me to ask for the check so I could get out of there as quickly as possible. But I had other plans. Plans I had been preparing for months. Plans that would finally see the light of day in this moment of absolute humiliation. "Could you please turn on the large screen?" I asked, in a voice so calm it even surprised me. "I have something very important to show everyone." Jose turned pale as if he had seen a ghost. Paola stopped shouting abruptly. Her mouth hung open in an expression of total confusion. And I kept smiling, because after months of silence, after months of humiliation, the moment I had been waiting for with infinite patience had finally arrived. The moment when the truth would come out and everyone would know who the real victim was in this story of family betrayal. As the waiter headed toward the screen's control panel, my mind traveled back 40 years, to when Jose was just a 5-year-old boy who would run into my arms every time I came home from work. In those days, I worked double shifts at the textile factory to pay for his private school. My hands would bleed from all the sewing, but every penny I earned, I invested in his future. "Mommy, why are your fingers red?" Jose would ask when I got home at 10 o'clock at night and he was still awake, waiting for me. I would smile and lie to him. "It's from the strawberries I ate at work, my love." I never wanted him to know my hands were hurt by needles so that he could have a better life. Saturdays were our special days. I would save money all week to take him to the amusement park or the movies. He would choose the film, and I would buy the biggest popcorn, even if it meant I wouldn't eat until Monday. Seeing his smile was all the reward I needed. "You're the best mom in the world," he would say, hugging me tightly, and I believed that nothing could ever change that pure love. When Jose turned 15, I sold my gold watch, the only memento I had of my mother, to buy him the bicycle he wanted so badly. It was a bright red bike with gear shifts. His eyes lit up when he saw it in the yard, but he didn't hug me like he used to. "Thanks, Mom," he murmured without looking me in the eye, more interested in showing off his gift to the neighbors than in thanking me. I should have noticed the first change then, but I was blind with motherly love. During college, Jose studied engineering, and I worked 3 jobs to pay for his tuition. I cleaned offices in the early mornings, worked at the factory during the day, and sold tamales at night. My feet would swell so much I could barely walk, but every time Jose called asking for money for books or to go out with his friends, I sent it to him without question. "Mom, I need $50 for a project," he would say on the phone, and I would rush to the bank to withdraw money from my meager savings. He never asked how I was, if I was eating well, if I was resting. He only called when he needed something. But I told myself it was normal, that young people are busy building their future. On his graduation day, I wore my only nice dress. I arrived early at the auditorium and sat in the front row, a disposable camera in my hands because I couldn't afford a digital one. When they called his name, I shouted with excitement and clapped until my palms hurt. But when Jose walked onto the stage, he didn't look for me in the crowd. His gaze went to the back, where his college friends were sitting. Those boys from wealthy families who always looked at me with contempt when I visited them at their dorm. After the ceremony, when I tried to approach him to congratulate him, he was surrounded by those friends and their elegant parents. "Jose, my love, congratulations," I said, touching his arm. He turned to me with a forced smile, as if my presence made him uncomfortable in front of his upper-class friends. "Thanks, Mom. I'll see you later, okay?" "We're going to celebrate," he said, giving me a quick kiss on the cheek before walking away with his group. I stood there, alone in the middle of the auditorium, watching my son leave with other people to celebrate the achievement I had financed with my sweat and my tears. That night I cried until I had no tears left, but I told myself it was just a phase, that soon Jose would mature and appreciate everything I had done for him. When he got his first job as an engineer, I hoped we could finally have a closer relationship. I thought that now that he no longer needed my money, we could be a real mother and son. But the calls became even scarcer. The visits were limited to birthdays and Christmas holidays, and they were always brief, as if he were fulfilling an obligation. "How are you, my son?" I would ask when I saw him, trying to recapture the connection we had lost. "Fine, Mom. Very busy with work." "You know how it is," he would reply while checking his phone, not really listening to my answer. I continued to prepare his favorite dishes when he came to visit. Mole poblano that took hours to cook. Tamales I made starting before dawn, vanilla flan that I knew he loved. But he would eat distractedly, always in a hurry to leave. "It's delicious, Mom, but I have to go. I'm meeting some friends." Then Paola came into our lives. Jose introduced me to her at an elegant restaurant I would have never chosen, where the menu prices made me dizzy. She arrived half an hour late, apologizing with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She wore designer clothes and had perfectly manicured nails that had never known a day of hard work. "A pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Rosales," she said, extending a hand as cold as ice. "Jose has told me so much about you." A lie. I knew it was a lie, because Jose had told me very little about her during the 6 months they had been dating. I only knew that she worked in marketing and came from a well-to-do family, as he would say with pride, as if that were more important than having a good heart. During that first dinner, Paola asked me questions that sounded polite, but had hidden thorns. "What did you do for a living when Jose was little?" When I told her about the textile factory, she nodded with a condescending smile. How admirable. It must have been very hard. But her eyes said something else. Her eyes said that I was exactly what she had expected, a working-class woman who didn't fit into the social climbing plans she had for my son. From that day on, Jose's visits became even more sporadic. When I called him, he always had an excuse. "Mom, I'm with Paola." "Mom, we're having dinner with Paola's parents." "Mom, we have plans with her friends." I tried to be a part of their lives. I gave them homemade gifts, invited them for meals, tried to get to know Paola better, but she always found a way to make me feel out of place. When I brought them tamales, she would say, "Oh, how delicious, but we're trying to eat healthier." When I gave them something I had knitted, she would smile and say, "What a traditional gift." On their wedding day, I spent all my savings on a worthy gift, a set of porcelain dinnerware I had seen in the window of an elegant shop. It was beautiful, with golden flowers on the edges. I thought Paola would appreciate it, that she would finally understand that I could also give fine things. But when she opened the gift at the gift table, in front of all the guests, her expression was one of barely concealed disappointment. "How nice," she murmured, and quickly set it aside to open the next gift. I later found out from a cousin that she had seen the dinnerware at a garage sale 6 months later, with the price tag still on it. That night, in the solitude of my home, I wondered what I had done wrong. At what point did the boy who told me I was the best mom in the world turn into a stranger who was ashamed of me? When did I stop being the woman who had sacrificed everything for him and become a nuisance to be tolerated at family holidays? But I kept waiting. I kept believing that one day Jose would remember who had been there when no one else was. I kept thinking that the love I had given him for so many years would eventually return to me. How wrong I was. And the worst part is, I hadn't seen anything yet compared to what was to come. It all started with a yellow envelope that arrived at my house on a Tuesday morning. The mailman rang the bell while I was watering my geraniums in the yard. It was a letter from the bank, something about changes to the ownership of my savings account. At first, I thought it was a clerical error, the kind that happens when banks update their systems. But when I opened the envelope and read the letter, my hands started to tremble. It stated that Jose Rosales had been added as a joint account holder to my main account, the one where I kept my life savings. The letter was dated 3 weeks prior, but I had never authorized such a thing. "It must be a mistake," I murmured, rereading the document over and over. My glasses fogged up from the steam rising from my chamomile tea. Jose wouldn't do something like this without consulting me. But deep in my heart, a little voice whispered that something was very wrong. I remembered the last time I had gone to the bank, 2 months ago, to deposit my pension check. Jose had come with me because I was a little confused by the new ATMs. He had offered to help me with the complicated paperwork, as he put it. "Mom, you don't understand these modern things anymore. Let me help you." he had said with a smile I had interpreted as filial affection, but which now seemed much more sinister. That afternoon I called Jose to ask about the letter. His phone rang 5 times before he answered, and when he did, his voice sounded strange, as if he had been expecting my call. "Hi, Mom. What do you need?" "My son, I received a letter from the bank that says you are a joint holder on my account. I don't understand." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear background noise, voices, as if he were in a restaurant or a meeting. He finally spoke, but his voice sounded different, colder. "Oh, right. I did it for your own good, Mom. You know that at your age, it's better to have someone younger help you with these things. It's for security." "For security? But Jose, I didn't authorize you." "Mom, don't worry about it. It's a normal thing. All people your age do it. Paola explained to me that it's the most convenient option." Paola. Of course, it had been Paola's idea. The woman who from day one had seen me as an obstacle on her path to a better life. "But my son, that account has all my savings. My pension money, what I got when I sold the big house. Mom, nothing is going to happen to your money. It's just so I can help you if you need anything." Relax. But I wasn't relaxed. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat in my favorite armchair, the floral one I had bought on an installment plan 10 years ago, staring at the bank letter over and over. There was something in Jose's tone I didn't like. Something in the way he had mentioned Paola that sent a chill down my spine. The next morning I went to the bank. Mr. Matias Lopez, the manager who had known me for years, greeted me with his usual kind smile. "Mrs. Lucinda, how can I help you? I want to know about the activity on my account. This letter I received, I don't quite understand." Matias checked his computer, his brow furrowed. His fingers flew across the keyboard as I waited, my heart beating faster and faster. "Here it is, Mrs. Lucinda. Indeed, your son Jose was added as a joint account holder 3 weeks ago. He came in person with an ID and, let me see, with a power of attorney signed by you." "A power of attorney? But I never signed that." Matias showed me his computer screen. There was my signature, or at least something that looked a lot like it, but I knew that handwriting wasn't mine. The strokes were too perfect, too controlled. My real signature had always been shaky, especially after the arthritis in my hands started. "Can I see the recent transactions on the account?" I asked, in a voice I didn't recognize as my own. Matias hesitated for a moment. "Mrs. Lucinda, since your son is a joint holder, he also has access to this information. But of course, you can see it. What I saw on that screen took my breath away. In the last 2 weeks, there had been 3 large withdrawals: $500 the previous Friday, $800 last Tuesday, $300 just yesterday. In total, $1,600 of my savings had disappeared." "Who made these withdrawals?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Your son Jose, Mrs. Lucinda. All the withdrawals were made with his debit card. I left the bank like a sleepwalker. My legs were shaking so much I had to sit on a bench in the park across from the branch. Children were playing on the swings while their mothers watched them. Life was going on as normal, but for me, everything had changed in those 30 minutes inside the bank. $1,600. That amount represented 3 months of my pension. It was the money I had saved by cutting expenses, buying the cheapest meat, using discount coupons, walking instead of taking the bus. It was the money I kept for emergencies, for medicine, to be able to maintain my independence a little longer. And Jose had taken it without telling me anything, without asking my permission, without even consulting me. That afternoon, when I got home, I found Jose sitting in my living room. He had used his copy of the key, the one I had given him years ago for emergencies. He was watching television as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't been robbing me for weeks. "Hi, Mom. How was the bank?" His question confirmed my worst suspicions. He knew I had gone to investigate. Matias had probably called to inform him, as was protocol, when one joint holder inquired about the account. "Jose, we need to talk." "About what, Mom?" His voice was casual, but his eyes avoided mine. "About the $1,600 you took from my account without telling me." He finally looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw something I never thought I would see in my own son, a calculating coldness that chilled me to the bone. Mom, that money isn't just yours. I'm a joint account holder, so it's mine too. Besides, I needed it for some important things. Important things? What could be more important than consulting your mother before taking her money? Jose got up from the sofa with an exaggerated sigh, as if I were a capricious child throwing a tantrum. Mom, don't be dramatic. It's just money. Besides, when you're gone, it's all going to be mine anyway. I'm just getting a head start. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. When you're gone. My own son was talking about my death as if it were something he eagerly awaited, as if I were a temporary obstacle on his path to an inheritance. Jose, that money is for my expenses, for my medicine, for my food. Mom, please, you live so modestly. You don't need that much money. I can manage it better than you. Manage it? By spending it on what? Things you wouldn't understand. Investments. Business opportunities. Paola and I are building our future. There it was again. Paola, the woman who had poisoned my son against me, who had filled his head with ideas that my money was also his, who had taught him to see me as a resource to be exploited instead of a mother to be loved. I want you to put that money back in the account, Jose. My son looked at me with a smile that was anything but affectionate. It was the smile of someone who knows they have all the power and has no intention of giving it up. I'm not putting anything back, Mom. That money is already invested. Besides, like I said, legally I have every right to use it. He walked towards the door, but before leaving, he turned to say something I will never forget. And Mom, I suggest you don't make a big deal out of this. It would be very easy to prove that at your age, you no longer have the mental capacity to manage your own finances. Very easy. The threat hung in the air like poison after he left. I stood in my living room, trembling, understanding for the first time that the child I had raised with so much love had become a stranger capable of blackmailing and robbing me. But what Jose didn't know was that his mother had not reached the age of 69 by being naive. That night, while he was probably celebrating the success of his first scam with Paola, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and a pen. It was time to start documenting everything. It was time to prepare for a war that my own son had declared against me. And I planned to win it. The days after that conversation with Jose felt like walking on quicksand. Every morning I would wake up hoping it had all been a nightmare, that my son was still the loving boy who would hug me and tell me I was the best mom in the world. But reality would hit me every time I looked at my savings passbook and saw the numbers dwindling without my authorization. I became an expert at checking my bank statements. Every strange movement, every unauthorized withdrawal, every transaction I didn't recognize was recorded in my red-covered notebook. It was a notebook I had bought to write down recipes, but it had now become the file for my own son's betrayals. For the first 2 weeks after our confrontation, Jose didn't call me once. It was as if he had decided that, once he had secured access to my money, he no longer had any reason to keep up appearances with me. I would dial his number, and it would always go to voicemail. The number you have dialed is not available at this time. The nights were the worst. I would lie awake in my bed, staring at the ceiling and remembering every moment of his childhood, trying to find the exact point where everything had started to change. Was it when he started college? When he met Paola? Or had it been much earlier, and I had been so blind with motherly love that I hadn't noticed? One afternoon, while cleaning the house to keep my mind busy, I found an old box under my bed. It was filled with letters and drawings Jose had made for me when he was little. To the best mom in the universe, one of the drawings said in uneven letters, "I love you to infinity," said a letter he had written me at the age of 8 after a fight, because I wouldn't buy him an expensive toy. I cried over those yellowed papers until I had no tears left. Where was that boy who loved me to infinity? What had I done wrong to lose him so completely? It was around that time that I started noticing strange things in the neighborhood. Mrs. Claudia Lopez, my next-door neighbor, mentioned that she had seen Jose several times lurking around my house when I wasn't home. "I saw him taking things from your backyard last Friday. Lucinda, I thought you had asked him to do it, but since I didn't see you around—" "What things?" I asked, my heart racing. He took that large talavera planter you had by the back door, the blue one with yellow flowers. And I also saw him load some boxes into the car. The talavera planter. It was an antique piece that had belonged to my grandmother, one of the few valuable things I had left. I ran to the backyard, and sure enough, it was gone. In its place was just a circular mark on the concrete where it had stood for the last 15 years. That night I searched the entire house, looking for what else was missing. The silver cutlery set I had inherited from my Aunt Martina was gone from the dining room drawer. The bronze candlesticks that were always on the fireplace mantel were no longer there. Even my jewelry box, which only contained a few modest pieces but with sentimental value, had been completely emptied. Jose had a key to my house. He had been coming in and taking my things little by little, probably selling everything to finance his new life with Paola. The next day, I went to the hardware store and had all the locks changed. Mr. Osvaldo Perez, the owner, looked at me with concern as he worked. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Lucinda? Did you have a problem with burglars?" "Yes," I said, and it wasn't a lie. I had a problem with burglars, but changing the locks didn't stop Jose. A week later, Claudia called me, alarmed. "Lucinda, your son is here with a locksmith. He says you asked him to open the door because you lost your keys." I rushed home, and sure enough, there was Jose with a man holding tools to open locks. When he saw me arrive, Jose smiled as if nothing was wrong. "Hi, Mom. Why did you change the locks and not give me a copy? I thought you'd lost your keys." "I didn't lose anything, Jose. I changed the locks because I don't want you coming into my house without permission." The locksmith looked at us uncomfortably, clearly realizing he was in the middle of a family problem. "Ma'am, do you want me to open the door or not?" "No," I said firmly. "I do not." Jose paid the locksmith and sent him away, but he didn't leave. He stood on my doorstep, looking at me with those cold eyes I no longer recognized. "Mom, this is ridiculous. I'm your son. I have a right to enter your house." "No, Jose, you don't have a right to come in and steal my things." "Steal? I'm not stealing anything. I'm just taking things that are going to be mine anyway." There it was again, that horrible phrase. "They're going to be mine anyway." As if my death were just an annoying formality he had to wait for. "Those things are mine as long as I'm alive, Jose, and I plan to live for many more years." My son laughed, but it wasn't a joyful laugh. It was a cruel laugh, full of contempt. "Mom, at your age, you never know. Things can change very quickly." The implied threat in his words made me tremble. Was my own son wishing for me to die soon so he could inherit what little I had left? I couldn't sleep that night. I sat by my bedroom window, watching the street, fearing that Jose would come back with more locksmiths or that he would simply decide to break a window to get in. There was something in his behavior that scared me deeply. It was no longer just greed. It was something darker, more dangerous. The withdrawals from my bank account continued. Every week, new transactions that I hadn't authorized appeared. $300 here, $500 there. My pension barely covered my basic expenses, and Jose was taking all my emergency savings. I tried talking to the bank again, but Matias Lopez explained that legally they couldn't do anything as long as Jose remained a joint account holder. "Mr. Jose has the same authority over the account as you do, Mrs. Lucinda. I'm sorry, but I can't stop the withdrawals. But that money is mine. I saved it for years. I understand your frustration, ma'am, but from a legal standpoint, you are both owners of the funds." I left the bank feeling a desperation I had never experienced before. Not only was I losing my money, but the entire system seemed to be on Jose's side. He had the law on his side. He had the documents that proved his right to my account. He had all the power, and I had nothing but my word against his. But then I remembered something Matias had said during my first visit. Jose had presented a power of attorney to become a joint holder on my account, a document I had supposedly signed, but which I knew was a forgery. That afternoon I took the bus downtown and looked for the notary's office that was on the document's seal. It was a small office in an old building run by an elderly notary named Lorenzo Godinez. "I need information about a document I supposedly signed here 2 months ago," I said, showing him the copy of the power of attorney. Don Lorenzo examined the document carefully, then consulted his files. "Here is the record. Mrs. Rosales. The document was signed on March 15th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Mr. Godinez, I have never come to this notary's office. On that day, I was at the hospital with my friend Lindalba Ramos, who had broken her hip. I have the hospital receipts and witnesses who can prove it. The notary looked at me in surprise, then checked his files again. That's very strange, ma'am. According to my records, you were here in person, presented your identification, and signed the document in front of me. Can you describe the woman who signed? Don Lorenzo hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. She was a woman of about your age, but now that I see you, there are differences. The woman who came had darker hair. She was a little taller. My heart began to pound violently. Did she come alone? No. She was accompanied by a young man who said he was her son. He was the one who brought all the documents and explained the procedure. Jose had come with a woman who had impersonated me. They had forged my identity to legally rob me. The betrayal was even deeper than I had imagined. Mr. Godinez, this is fraud. Someone impersonated me to sign that document. The notary turned pale as he realized the magnitude of the problem. Mrs. Rosales, if that's true, we need to report this to the authorities immediately. This is a very serious crime. I left the notary's office with a copy of the report that Don Lorenzo had promised to send to the district attorney's office, but deep down, I knew the legal process would take months, maybe years. In the meantime, Jose would keep robbing me, and I would keep losing everything I had worked for decades to achieve. But for the first time in weeks, I felt something like hope. I had evidence. I had proof that Jose had committed fraud. It was no longer just my word against his. I had documents, witnesses, records that proved my son had betrayed me in the most vile way possible. That night, sitting at my kitchen table with my red notebook, I wrote down everything I had discovered. Every date, every name, every detail that could be important. If Jose wanted to play dirty, I was going to be prepared. But what I didn't know was that the worst was yet to come. Jose and Paola were just getting started with their plans, and my humiliation in the restaurant would be just the first act of a much crueler play. The difference was that now I was documenting everything, and when the moment of truth came, I would be ready to fight back. After discovering the fraud at the notary's office, something inside me changed. I was no longer the naive woman who hoped her son would come to his senses and return the money of his own free will. I had become a detective in my own life, documenting every lie, every theft, every betrayal with the meticulous patience of someone who knows that justice will come, but only if you are prepared for when that moment arrives. I hired the services of a young lawyer named Fabian Ramos, who had his office near the Central Market. He was a serious man with thick glasses who listened to me attentively as I told him the whole story. When I finished speaking, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. Mrs. Lucinda, what your son did is document fraud and abuse of trust. These are serious crimes that could land him in jail. But we need to build a solid case before we proceed. What do you need me to do? Document everything, every unauthorized withdrawal, every item he has taken from your house, every time he has used false documents. We need to create a pattern that shows this was not a misunderstanding, but a planned scam. I left that office with a clear mission. For the following weeks, I became a silent shadow, gathering evidence of my own son's crimes. First, I went to the bank every 3 days to print updated account statements. Matias Lopez no longer looked at me with pity. Now there was respect in his eyes when he saw me arrive with my folder full of documents organized by date. Here are this week's transactions, Mrs. Lucinda, he would say, handing me the papers. There were 2 more withdrawals. Can you give me the security camera footage from those days? For that, I would need a court order, but I can confirm that both withdrawals were made by Mr. Jose, in person, using the debit card. Every withdrawal was recorded in my red notebook, with the date, time, amount, and location of the ATM. Jose had become careless, always taking out money from the same places. Near his office, near the gym where he and Paola went, near her parents' house. But Jose wasn't just stealing money. He also continued to take valuables from my house, even though I had changed the locks. I found out how he was doing it when my neighbor Claudia told me she had seen Paola talking to the gardener who tended to several yards in the neighborhood. She was asking him about the times you leave the house, Lucinda. I thought it was strange, but I didn't want to get involved. The gardener, an older man named Tomas, confirmed what I suspected. Yes, Mrs. Lucinda, your son's wife asked me when you go out to run your errands. I told her you always go to the market on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I didn't think it was wrong to tell her. Now I understood how Jose knew exactly when my house would be empty. He had been using that information to get in through the back window, which had an old lock that was easy to force. I installed a small camera that I bought at an electronics store. It was a simple device that was activated by motion and recorded onto a memory card. I hid it among the plants in the backyard, aimed at the window Jose used to get in. The first recording I got broke my heart, but it also gave me the evidence I needed. There was my son, my own son, forcing open the window of my house like any common thief. But what hurt the most was seeing that he wasn't alone. Paola was with him, laughing as he put my things into bags. Are you sure she's not coming back? Paola's voice could be heard on the recording. Relax, she always takes 2 hours at the market. We have plenty of time, Jose replied as he wrapped my antique wall clock in a towel. I watched them take my grandmother's clock, the porcelain tea set I had inherited from my aunt, even the family photographs that had silver frames. They weren't just stealing valuables, they were erasing my history, my memories, everything that connected me to the past generations of my family. But I continued to document in silence. Every recording was saved in a small, safe deposit box I rented at the bank. Every stolen object was recorded in my notebook with photographs I had taken before they disappeared. One afternoon I decided to follow Jose when he left the bank after making another withdrawal. I took a taxi and asked the driver to keep a distance as we followed my son's car. Jose drove directly to an upscale mall in the most expensive part of the city. Wait for me here, please, I told the taxi driver. I'll be back in an hour. I went into the mall and looked for Jose among the stores. I found him in an exclusive jewelry store, accompanied by Paola, buying a diamond necklace that cost more than $3,000. The money he had taken from my account over the last month. I hid behind a pillar and watched them as Paola tried on the necklace in front of a mirror. Her eyes shone with greed as Jose caressed her neck where the diamonds rested. It looks perfect on you, my love, Jose said with a tenderness he no longer showed me. You deserve it for being so patient with this whole situation. Situation? Paola asked, adjusting the necklace. You know, with my mom. I know it's not easy dealing with her. Don't worry, my love. Soon she won't be our problem anymore. Those words chilled my blood. Soon she won't be our problem anymore. What exactly were they planning? I took discreet photographs with my cell phone, Jose paying for the necklace with cash, Paola leaving the store with a jewelry bag, the two of them hugging and kissing as they walked through the mall, cheerfully spending the money they had stolen from me. That night, in the safety of my home, I added the photographs to my evidence file. I now had proof that Jose was using my money to buy expensive gifts for his wife, while leaving me without the resources to cover my basic expenses. But my investigation was just beginning. I wanted to know exactly what else Jose and Paola were planning, so I hired a private investigator recommended by my lawyer. She was a young woman named Leandra Mendez, specializing in family fraud cases. I want you to find out everything about my son and his wife, I told her. Their finances, their properties, their future plans, everything. Leandra worked for 3 weeks, and what she discovered left me breathless. Jose and Paola had been living far beyond their means. They had credit card debts of over $10,000. They had taken out a loan to buy a luxury car they couldn't afford. They had rented an apartment in an exclusive area that cost more than half of Jose's salary. Your son and daughter-in-law are bankrupt, Mrs. Lucinda, Leandra explained, showing me the documents. The withdrawals from your bank account are the only thing allowing them to maintain their lifestyle. But the most shocking discovery was about their future plans. Leandra had obtained copies of text message conversations between Jose and Paola, where they discussed the possibility of having me declared mentally incompetent to manage my own finances. If we can get a doctor to declare she has senile dementia, we can become her legal guardians, one of Paola's messages read. Then we'll have total control over all her money and properties. My mom is perfectly fine mentally, Jose replied. It's going to be hard to convince a doctor There are ways to make her seem confused during an evaluation, Paola retorted. I know someone who can help us. My own family was conspiring to have me declared insane and steal everything I owned. The level of betrayal was so deep that for a moment I thought I might be misreading the messages. But there it was, in black and white, the evidence that Jose and Paola had planned not only to rob me, but to destroy my reputation and my freedom. That night I cried until I had no tears left. But when morning came, there was no sadness left in my heart. There was only a cold, calculated determination. Jose wanted to play the game of manipulation and deceit. He wanted to use the laws and the system against me. He wanted to make me look like a crazy old woman while he and his wife spent my money on luxuries. But what they didn't know was that their mother had learned to play that same game. And I had evidence, testimonies, recordings, and documents that would prove every one of their lies. The difference was, I was going to win this game. Because while they were acting out of greed, I was acting for justice. And justice, when well prepared, always triumphs over avarice. I just had to wait for the perfect moment to reveal all my cards. And that moment was coming sooner than they imagined. While I was silently gathering evidence, documenting each of their betrayals with the meticulousness of a detective, Jose and Paola were living as if they owned the world. It was painful to see them enjoy a life of luxury, financed with my money, acting as if I were invisible, as if my lifelong sacrifices meant nothing. Social media became a cruel window into their world of lies. Paola constantly posted photographs on her Instagram, showing off every purchase, every elegant dinner, every expensive gift Jose gave her, all financed with the money they had stolen from me. But she presented it as if it were the result of her husband's hard work. My husband spoiled me with this beautiful necklace, she wrote next to a photo where she sported the diamonds they had bought with $3,000 from my account. I'm so lucky to have a man who values his wife. The comment section filled with congratulations and heart emojis. Her friends wrote things like, "So jealous, and you have the best husband in the world." Each post was like a stab in my heart. There was my money, turned into jewelry adorning the neck of the woman who despised me. There were my life savings, transformed into symbols of a false love built on theft and betrayal. Jose had also started showing off on his social media. He posted photos of expensive restaurants where he dined with Paola, of the weekend trips they took, of the new car they had bought. Hard work has its rewards. He wrote next to a photo of them toasting with champagne in a 5-star hotel. His friends replied with admiration. "Living the good life, brother. That's how you do it, Jose. You're an example of success." No one knew that this success was built on the systematic theft from his own mother. The cruelest part of all were the motivational posts Paola had started to share. Quotes about freeing oneself from negativity and staying away from toxic people. One in particular broke my soul. Sometimes you have to cut ties with family members who only bring drama into your life. Not everyone who shares your blood deserves to share your future. The hypocrisy was nauseating. She was presenting herself as an empowered woman who had made tough decisions to protect her happiness, when in reality she was a thief who had manipulated my son to steal everything I had. On weekends, they hosted parties in their apartment. Through their guests' Instagram stories, I could see how they spent my money on expensive alcohol, gourmet food, and elegant decorations. Jose appeared in the videos laughing, toasting, acting as the perfect host of a perfect life. "Jose is the best," one of the guests said in a video where my son was pouring whiskey from a bottle that cost more than $200. "He always treats us to the best things." Meanwhile, I was eating refried beans and tortillas to stretch my pension, trying to save every dollar I had left after Jose systematically emptied my bank account. One afternoon, I decided to drive by the parking lot of the office where Jose worked, just to see the new car they had bought with my money. It was a late-model silver sedan, with leather seats and chrome rims. It was perfectly clean and shiny, like a trophy of their victory over me. As I watched the car from a distance, I saw Jose come out of the building accompanied by some colleagues. He was wearing a new suit I didn't recognize, probably bought on one of their shopping sprees financed with my savings. His co-workers were congratulating him for something, patting him on the back with admiration. "Jose, that project you presented was brilliant," I heard one of them say. You definitely deserve that raise. Thanks, brother. The truth is, things have been going really well for me lately, Jose replied with a proud smile. Paula and I are in the best moment of our lives. I hid behind a car so he wouldn't see me, but I kept listening to their conversation. It shows, man. The new car, the dinners you posted on Instagram, the trip to Cancun you took last month. You're definitely living the life. Yeah, we just decided to invest in our happiness, you know? We no longer allow other people's negativity to affect our plans. Other people's negativity, that's how Jose referred to his own mother. As if I were an annoying stranger, and not the woman who had sacrificed everything to give him the opportunities he now enjoyed. I watched them get into the car they had bought with my money and drive away into their life of lies. Jose drove with the window down, music blasting, without a hint of guilt or remorse on his face. That night I checked their social media again and found a new post from Paula that made me tremble with rage. It was a photo of her at a spa, getting a facial. Relaxation day after a very stressful week, she had written. Sometimes you need to disconnect from all the family drama and focus on your mental well-being. Family drama. That's what she called the fact that I had discovered they were robbing me. My suffering, my pain, my loneliness were simply drama that she needed to rest from at a spa paid for with my money. The comments were full of support. You're right, girl. Toxic family is the worst. Good for you for getting away from that negativity. Her friends congratulated her for being so mature and wise in walking away from family problems. If only they knew the truth. If only they knew that the family drama was that Paula had manipulated my son to rob me, that she had planned to have me declared mentally incompetent, that she had entered my house like a common thief to take my family's heirlooms. But what hurt the most were Jose's posts about family. Every now and then, he would post old photos from when he was a child, accompanied by reflections on learning to value the right people in your life. He once posted a photo of himself when he was 10 years old, next to a text that said, "Growing up, you realize that family isn't always who shares your blood, but who shares your values and respects your decisions." The irony was cruel. He talked about values while he was robbing me. He talked about respect while he was humiliating me. He talked about family while he was conspiring to destroy me. His friends commented on these posts with admiration. So mature, Jose. It's true. You choose your family. You're so right, brother. No one knew that behind those wise words was a son who had betrayed his mother in the most vile way possible. No one knew that his maturity consisted of stealing the savings of the woman who had raised him with so much love. One night, while checking Paula's Instagram stories, I saw her at an extremely expensive restaurant celebrating her birthday. Jose had organized an intimate party with their closest friends. The cake was a work of art that surely cost more than $100. The bottles of wine on the table were from brands I didn't even know. My husband organized the most beautiful dinner for me, Paula said in a video where she showed off the elegantly decorated table. I feel so loved and valued. This is what it means to have a partner who truly loves you. Jose appeared in the video, giving her a kiss and saying, "For the most important woman in my life, you deserve this and so much more." The most important woman in his life. I, who had held him in my arms when he had a fever, who had worked 3 jobs to pay for his college, who had sold my few valuable possessions to give him everything he needed, was no longer important to him. That celebration, that declaration of love, those expensive gifts, everything was financed with the money he had stolen from me. Every dollar Jose spent to show his love for Paola was one less dollar I had for my medicine, for my food, for keeping a roof over my head. But they continued to live their perfect life, posting perfect photos, receiving congratulations for being a perfect couple. The world saw them as a successful and loving marriage, while I became the invisible shadow of their story, the silent sacrifice that financed their happiness. What Jose and Paula didn't know was that every one of those posts, every photo of their luxuries, every boast about their perfect life, was becoming additional evidence for my case. My lawyer had taught me to take screenshots of everything, to document how they were spending my money while leaving me in poverty. This clearly shows they weren't taking your money out of necessity, Fabian had explained. This shows it was pure greed. So I continued to document in silence. Every photo of Paola with new jewelry, every video of Jose showing off his lifestyle, Every post where they presented themselves as victims of family drama while living like kings with the proceeds of their theft. They thought they had won. They thought they had managed to get rid of the annoying burden I represented in their perfect lives. They thought they could keep stealing from me indefinitely while I remained quiet like a silent victim. But they were very wrong, because while they were celebrating, I was preparing the sweetest revenge of all, the truth. And that truth was about to explode in their faces in the most public and humiliating way possible. Jose's birthday was coming up, and I had a special surprise prepared for him. A surprise that would end his life of lies, once and for all. The waiter nervously approached the control panel, as the entire restaurant remained silent, watching the family drama unfold before their eyes. Jose had gone completely pale, and Paola was speechless for the first time since her furious outburst began. They both stared at me, as if they had just seen a ghost. "What are you doing, Mom?" Jose murmured, his voice trembling with panic. I maintained my serene smile, the one I had practiced for months while documenting every one of their betrayals. "I just want to share something special with everyone on my son's birthday." The large screen flickered on with an electric hum. First, the restaurant's menu appeared, then the screen went black, and finally, the video I had so carefully prepared began to play. The first image was a photograph of Jose when he was 5 years old, smiling in my arms. My voice began to narrate over the image. "This is the story of a mother who loved her son more than her own life." "Turn that off," Paola shouted, jumping out of her chair, but the waiter didn't know what to do and looked to me for instructions. "Let it play, please," I said calmly. The video continued, showing photographs of Jose's childhood interspersed with bank documents. My voice explained how I had worked 3 jobs to pay for his education, how I had sold my possessions to give him everything he needed, how I had saved every dollar thinking of our future. And so my narration continued as the bank statements with the unauthorized withdrawals appeared on the screen. My son and his wife decided it was time to cash in on all those years of sacrifice. The restaurant patrons watched, mesmerized. Some took out their phones to record what was happening. Jose tried to get up to head for the control panel, but I raised my hand. "If you turn off that video, Jose, tomorrow I will file all the fraud documents with the district attorney's office. Everything is ready, just waiting for my decision." Jose froze. He knew I wasn't bluffing. The video then showed the security footage of Jose and Paola entering my house like thieves. The image was clear. There they were, forcing my window, stealing my most precious belongings, laughing as they packed up my family's memories. A murmur of outrage swept through the restaurant. "How horrible!" An elderly woman exclaimed from a nearby table. Stealing from his own mother. But the best was yet to come. The video showed the screenshots of Paola and Jose's social media, flaunting the luxuries they bought with my money. The diamond necklace, the expensive dinners, the trips, the new car, all while I was eating beans and rice to stretch my pension. "This is what my son considers hard work," my voice said, as the images flashed one after another. Stealing from his mother, and then bragging on the internet about the fruits of that theft. Paola had started to cry, but they were not tears of remorse. They were tears of rage and humiliation. Her perfect image, her reputation as a successful woman, it was all crumbling in front of dozens of witnesses. The climax of the video arrived when it played excerpts of the text conversations between Jose and Paola, where they planned to have me declared mentally incompetent. Their own words condemned them. "If we can get a doctor to declare she has senile dementia, we can become her legal guardians." The silence in the restaurant was sepulchral. Even the waiters had stopped working to watch the screen. Jose's hands were trembling, and he was breathing as if he had run a marathon. "This is slander," Paola finally shouted, desperately trying to salvage some dignity. "She's making all this up because she's jealous of our happiness." But her defense sounded hollow after seeing the evidence. The photographs, the bank documents, the security recordings, the text messages, it was all irrefutable. The video ended with an image of me, taken that very week, sitting in my kitchen with a cup of tea. My voice concluded, "I just wanted everyone to know who my son, Jose Rosales, and his wife Paola Mendez really are, so that when you see them showing off their perfect life on social media, you remember where the money to finance it came from." The screen went dark. and the restaurant remained silent for several seconds that felt like an eternity. Then the murmurs began, the whispered conversations, the looks of contempt directed at Jose and Paola. How could they do that to their own mother? A young woman commented to her companion. "What scoundrels!" An older man exclaimed from another table. Jose tried one last desperate defense. "Mom, you don't understand. We were going to pay you back all the money. We were just managing it better." My laugh was soft, but heavy with a deep sadness. "Managing it? Is that what you call stealing $3,000 to buy a necklace? Is that what you call planning to have me declared insane to take everything I own?" Paola stood up abruptly. She couldn't take any more of the humiliation. "Let's go, Jose. We don't have to put up with this." But Jose didn't move. He was calculating the consequences, understanding that his world had just collapsed in front of dozens of witnesses who were already uploading videos to their own social media. "Sit down, Paola," I said with an authority I hadn't used in years. "Because we're not finished." I took a thick folder full of documents from my purse. "I have here copies of everything you just saw, plus additional evidence I didn't include in the video. Forged contracts, appraisals of stolen items from my house, witness statements." Jose finally spoke, but his voice was barely a whisper. "What do you want, Mom?" "I want you to return every dollar you stole from me. I want you to bring back every object you took from my house. And I want you to stay out of my life forever." "And if we do that?" he asked in a broken voice. "If you do that, I will consider not pressing the criminal charges that would send you both to jail for several years." The proposal hung in the air like a sword of Damocles. Jose and Paola looked at each other, understanding they had no other choice. Their perfect life, built on lies and theft, had just ended in front of the whole world. And I sat there, in my chair, feeling for the first time in months that justice existed. I hadn't screamed, I hadn't stooped to their level. I had simply let the truth speak for itself, and the truth was more powerful than all their lies combined. The days following Jose and Paola's public collapse were like watching a house of cards built on sand fall apart. Everything they had built with my stolen money crumbled with a speed that surprised even me. The truth, once released, spread everywhere like an unstoppable fire. The video from the restaurant had gone viral on social media. Someone had uploaded it to TikTok with the title, "Son and daughter-in-law rob grandma and are publicly exposed," and in less than 24 hours it had 500,000 views. The comments were ruthless. "What disgusting people. That lady deserves justice. I hope they go to jail." The first call came on Monday morning. It was Jose, with a voice I didn't recognize. He sounded broken, desperate, completely different from the arrogant man who had threatened me weeks ago. "Mom, please, we need to talk." "We already talked at the restaurant, Jose. I think it was very clear. Please, Mom, people are harassing us. Paola can't even leave the house. They already know what happened at my work. My boss called me into his office to ask if it was true that I had stolen from my mother." The desperation in his voice was palpable, but I remained firm. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him it was a misunderstanding, that you're confused, but he didn't believe me. Mom, they're going to fire me. I can't lose my job." "You should have thought of that before you became a thief, Jose." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear Paola crying in the background, shouting something I couldn't make out. "Mom, I never wanted things to go this far. At first, I was just going to borrow the money. I was going to pay you back." "Borrow? Without asking my permission? By forging documents? By breaking into my house like a thief?" "It was Paola's idea. She convinced me that you didn't need that much money anymore, that we could invest it better." For the first time in years, Jose was blaming his wife instead of defending her. The pressure was turning them against each other. "Don't give me excuses, Jose. You made the decisions. You signed the fake documents. You broke into my house to steal. But I'm your son," he suddenly shouted, as if that were a magic card that erased all his crimes. "A son doesn't steal from his mother. A son doesn't plan to have her declared insane to take her assets. A son doesn't allow his wife to humiliate his mother in public." I hung up the phone and didn't answer the 30 calls that followed. Jose and Paola's problems multiplied quickly. The bank had frozen my account after I filed the formal fraud complaint. This meant Jose could no longer take out money, but it also meant that all the automatic payments they had set up started to bounce. Their elegant apartment, the new car, the credit cards they had been paying off with my money, everything went into delinquency overnight. Leandra Mendez, my private investigator, kept me informed of every development. Your daughter-in-law tried to sell the diamond necklace, but the jewelry store refused to buy it when they saw the viral video, Leandra reported to me by phone. Apparently, the owner of the store doesn't want to be associated with the scandal. And the car? The finance company has already started the repossession process. Since they can't make the payments, they're going to take it away at any moment. Sure enough, a week later I saw on some neighbor's social media how a tow truck was taking away the silver sedan from the parking lot of their apartment building. Jose ran out after the tow truck, shouting and waving his arms, but there was nothing he could do. The friends who once congratulated them on their perfect life began to distance themselves. The invitations to parties dried up. The likes on their social media posts dropped dramatically. Paula had to temporarily close her Instagram account after receiving thousands of negative comments from people who had seen the video. Thief. Shameless. Give the lady her money back. The comments had become relentless. Jose also faced consequences at his job. His boss, Mr. Lorenzo Perez, was an older man who valued personal integrity highly. When he saw the video and verified that it was all true, he had no choice but to fire Jose. I can't have someone in my company who steals from his own mother, he told Jose, according to one of his former co-workers who knew me. What guarantee do I have that he won't steal from me? Without a job, without a car, without savings, and with their reputations destroyed, Jose and Paula began to despair. They tried to move into a cheaper apartment, but landlords rejected their application as soon as they searched their names online and found the viral video. That's when the desperate attempts at reconciliation began. First came the letters, handwritten notes that Jose would slide under my door when I wasn't home. Mom, forgive me. I know I was wrong. I'm willing to give you everything back, but I need you to drop the charges. I can't get the money you need without a job. Then came the gifts. Cheap flowers from the market, chocolates from the corner store, small tokens he had never given me before, but which he now desperately hoped would soften my heart. Finally, he appeared in person, knocking on my door one Saturday morning. When I opened it, I almost didn't recognize him. Jose had lost weight, had deep dark circles under his eyes, and his clothes looked wrinkled as if he had slept in them. Mom, please, just 5 minutes. Against my better judgment, I let him in. He sat on the same armchair where weeks ago he had threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent, but now he looked like a defeated man. Mom, I don't know how to ask for your forgiveness for everything I did. You can start by returning my money. That's what I want to do, Mom, but I need time. Without a job, it's impossible, and no one will hire me after what happened. That's not my problem, Jose. You created this situation. I know, but Mom, I'm your son. You can't completely destroy my life. The irony of his words was overwhelming. He had tried to destroy my life, to steal everything I had, to have me declared insane. And now he was asking for mercy because the consequences of his actions were catching up with him. Where's Paula? I asked. Jose looked down, ashamed. She left. She went to her parents. She says this is my fault, that I should have handled the situation with you better. Even in their marriage, things were falling apart. The woman for whom he had betrayed his mother had abandoned him as soon as things got tough. Mom, I promise I'll change. I'll give everything back, but I need you to help me, to drop the charges so I can get a job. I got up from my chair and went to the window. Outside, life was going on as normal. Children were playing in the street. Ladies were hanging their laundry. Street vendors were calling out their wares. The world had kept spinning while my family was destroyed by greed. Jose, I said without turning to look at him, you made the decision to steal from me. You made the decision to humiliate me. You made the decision to plan to destroy my life. Now you have to live with the consequences of those decisions. But Mom, there are no buts, Jose. For months you treated me as if I were a nuisance, as if I were an obstacle on your path to happiness. Now it's my turn to treat you as what you really are, a stranger who robbed me, Jose sat in silence for several minutes. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "Is there nothing I can do to make you forgive me?" I turned to look at him one last time. In his eyes, there was nothing left of the boy I had once loved more than my own life. There was only a broken man who had destroyed everything good he had for money. "You could start by being the man I thought I had raised, but I'm afraid that man never really existed." Jose stood up slowly and walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned one last time. "Mom, I did love you. Maybe not in the right way, but I did love you. If this is love, Jose, I'd prefer the hatred of my enemies." I closed the door behind him and knew it was the last time we would speak as mother and son. Jose had chosen money over love, greed over family, lies over truth. Now he had to live in the world he had created with those decisions. A world without a mother, without a wife, without a job, without friends, without respect. A world where he had lost everything because he had tried to steal it all. 6 months after Jose's collapse, my life had found a peace I hadn't known in years. The stolen money was gradually returned through a legal settlement supervised by my lawyer, Fabian. Jose had to sell everything he had bought with my savings. Paola's jewelry, the expensive furniture from their apartment, even his designer watch. The legal process ended with Jose serving community service and probation. Paola, who had been an accomplice to the fraud, received the same sentence. Their marriage did not survive the pressure. They divorced before the end of the year, blaming each other for the debacle they had created. With the recovered money, I bought a small house on the outskirts of the city. It had a garden where I planted tomatoes, chili peppers, and herbs. Every morning I would water my plants while drinking chamomile tea from a cup that had belonged to my mother. The house had 2 bedrooms, but I only used one. The other I turned into my study, where I kept all the documents from the case, along with family photographs from better times. It was my personal archive of justice served. Jose tried to contact me several times during those months. Letters asking for forgiveness, calls I didn't answer. He even came to my new house once. But I had learned that some wounds are too deep to heal, and some betrayals too great to forgive. One Sunday afternoon, while I was pruning my rose bushes, I heard someone ring the doorbell. Through the window, I saw Jose standing on my doorstep. He looked different, thinner, with gray hairs he didn't have before, dressed in simple clothes. There was nothing left of the arrogant man who had robbed me. I didn't open the door, but I did open the window to hear what he had to say. "Mom, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just wanted to tell you that I got a job at a factory. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm going to therapy to understand how I came to hurt you so much." His voice broke slightly, but I remained silent. "I know I'm not your son anymore. I know I lost that right when I decided to steal from you. But I wanted you to know that I wake up every day full of regret for what I did." He waited a few minutes, perhaps hoping for a response. When he realized I wouldn't give him one, he continued, "Mom, I will love you for the rest of my life, even if you don't love me anymore. And I will work for the rest of my days to be the man you thought I was." He walked away slowly. I watched him from my window until he disappeared around the corner. A small part of my heart felt something like compassion, but it was too late. The damage was done, the trust destroyed forever. That night, as I prepared my simple dinner of soup and toast, I reflected on the path I had traveled. From being a woman humiliated and robbed by her own family, I had become someone who had fought for justice and won. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't stooped to their level. I hadn't sought cruel or disproportionate revenge. I had simply documented the truth, presented it at the right moment, and let the natural consequences of their actions run their course. The next day, I received a call from my neighbor Claudia. Her granddaughter had seen the viral video and wanted to meet me. "She says you're her hero, Mrs. Lucinda, that you taught her that older women can also stand up for themselves." That afternoon, while watering my geraniums, I thought about all the women my age who were probably living through similar situations. Ungrateful children, families who saw them as burdens, relatives waiting for inheritances before their time. My story had become a symbol of silent resistance. I hadn't needed to shout to be heard. I hadn't needed to insult to prove my point. The truth had been enough. That night, before sleeping, I sat in my favorite armchair with a hot cup of tea. On the table was a letter that had arrived that morning. It was from a lady in Guadalajara who had seen my story online and wanted to thank me for giving her the courage to report her own son who was robbing her. Your example taught me that a mother's love doesn't mean allowing ourselves to be disrespected, the letter said. Thank you for showing me that dignity has no age. I smiled as I folded the letter. My personal pain had become strength for other women. My private justice had inspired other mothers to defend themselves. I closed my eyes and remembered the words I had written in my red notebook the day after the restaurant. I will not scream. I will not cry. I will not stoop. I will only prove my truth, and that will be enough. And it had been enough. Jose had lost everything. His job, his marriage, his reputation, his family. But the most important thing he had lost was the chance to be loved by the only person who had loved him unconditionally his entire life. I, on the other hand, had gained something priceless, self-respect, the certainty that when circumstances tested me, I did not break. I stood firm, acted with intelligence, and achieved justice without losing my dignity. I turned off the lamp and went to my bedroom. Tomorrow would be another day in my new life, a life built on truth and justice. A life where I no longer had to fear anyone because I had learned that the most dangerous woman in the world is one who has nothing left to lose except her dignity. And no one would ever take that dignity from me again. I closed my bedroom door not out of fear, but out of peace. Not out of resentment, but out of self-love. That was my victory, not having become what they were,